There's a question up on top. One of the other areas, like we talked about and that we're working with, is called corporate challenges. And so what we're doing is working with larger organizations that may have a problem or a challenge and they're not sure how to best handle it. And actually, the 25th, Friday the 25th, we have an event with Bar Chart. Some of you might be familiar with the Bar Chart organization. And they're bringing in about a dozen teams from IIT to work on a project that they have with the problem they have. So I think you're going to see more and more of these corporate education / entrepreneurial kind of projects, these corporate challenges. So my question to you is, once you get an education, what do? You start a business, right, Lexi? So Lexi, come on up, bring your team up, and let's talk about some businesses that are in the space.
So we'll just get started here. I wanted to welcome you guys to Blockchain Startups Making a Difference. So here we've got John Toohey, Tessa Flippin, and Matt Keenahan. And I'm going to give them a chance to briefly introduce themselves here. Here we go, John, you can take it away.
Okay, good afternoon. So my name is John Toohey. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a blockchain startup called Dominode. And we are building a platform for professional identity management for people who operate in regulated environments. So attorneys, medical professionals, gaming. So providing a secure form of identity management, providing big focus on portability of data and the privacy of the data.
Great. And then Tessa.
Hi, I'm Tessa Flippin. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a startup called La Plataforma. And we are solving the problem of remittances in Latin America. So I'm a graduate of Stanford University and Columbia Business School, and after business school, I moved to South America and launched my own business there. So we are working in Santiago, Chile.
Hi, I'm Matt Keenahan. I'm Vice President of Digital Mint. We're most known as one of the largest providers of point-of-sale Bitcoin sale solutions, so like BTMs or behind-the-counter solutions. So.
Great, and just to get us started today, I know that we don't have too much time, and I definitely do want to leave questions for the end, but something that I think is very interesting about the blockchain space in general is that it's this very specific new emerging technology that just attracts people from all different industries and all different spaces, because really if you think about it, everyone wants to explore certain ways where trust can be changed from a third party into this platform that can be confirmed with math and cryptography. So I wanted to go through and ask you guys, so what was your blockchain story? What was your aha moment where after maybe reading about it or whatever, dabbling in some investing yourself, what was that real moment there? John, maybe we can start with you. What was your aha moment in your blockchain story?
So that moment for me would have been, it was a highly technical one. So I've spent many, many years designing and developing highly distributed systems. And I had two core problems that everybody has in those technical issues. One is contention. How do I share data? How can I make sure data is not being corrupted? And the other is the order that things happen. Time ordering of events in a distributed system. And the blockchain solves both of those in a very elegant fashion. And it's the first solution that's ever come along that actually solves the order things happen in. It's guaranteed by the blockchain, and because it's immutable and it's an append-only log, there is no issues with contention. So you don't have to worry about locking things. You simply can append, or the miners can append to the end of the block. So I had real-world problems, and the blockchain solves them from a technical point of view.
Right. And the timestamping is so important too, as we live in a digital world right now where more and more things are happening in near real time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the order. So
Exactly. And then Tessa?
My story is a lot less technical. So I was in business school at the time, and I went to South America. I was doing an internship in Peru, and basically they had me researching all of the new trends in financial services and trying to apply those to the emerging middle class in Peru. And so on a daily basis, I was researching the blockchain or anything really in FinTech, and I got really into the blockchain because within my peer group in business school, everybody was most of the people were going to end up on Wall Street. And so for me, I saw this as an opportunity to kind of like take a different perspective on finance than a lot of my classmates, and that was super exciting to me, and so I just kind of dove into blockchain after that.
So yeah, mine happened early on in college, around 2011. Like a lot of college kids, really had no idea what I wanted to do exactly. Stumbled across an article about Bitcoin blockchain. Also a lot less technical, but I come from a family where both my parents have been involved with NPOs or NGOs for their entire lives, both on the fundraising and then managing grant funds as well. So the aha moment for me was when, I conducted an actual transaction as a test and saw, the aspect of the immutable ledger, right? And how that could be applied to, certain issues that are commonplace for nonprofits, like misappropriation of funds, right? Doesn't necessarily apply to what I'm doing today, but I'm glad to see that, a lot of organizations are utilizing Bitcoin blockchain technology, such as like BitGive, for example, to do, to alleviate those issues.
Right, right. And just I'm realizing I never introduced myself. So Lexi Prodromos, I work at an enterprise-grade blockchain startup called Block, which is based in Chicago. And I'm also the director of operations of the Chicago Blockchain Center, which has been focusing on providing educational opportunities and hosting meetups, and then also has served as a semi-incubator for blockchain startups, specifically in the Chicago area. And we've worked with various private and public entities like the Illinois Blockchain Initiative. So Jennifer O'Rourke, who you heard from earlier today, of the Illinois Business Blockchain Liaison, is on our team. And so something that we've seen is that blockchain, as everyone has kind of been mentioning, it's got this very unique property of transferring trust. And so we wanted to, the main thrust of the argument and our discussion today was going to be talking about how do each of you guys think that blockchain can specifically be used for social good? There are a lot of applications for trying to improve business processes, but specifically for the betterment of humanity and society. So John, we can start with you.
So from my point of view, one of the scarcest and most valuable commodities we have today in the Western world is, one of the rarest and scarcest commodities we have right now in the Western world is privacy. Okay, let's start again. So protecting privacy, right? This to me, I think, is the fundamental thing that the blockchain can do. Oh, okay.
Just point it directly.
Point directly.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. God, I feel like I'm in a boy band. Yeah. So protecting privacy, right? This is a fundamental thing that the blockchain can do, and closer.
There we go.
Oh, okay. But without a full protection of privacy and ownership of your private data, right? When you give it away, and I'm not just talking about Equifax. I mean, this is pervasive in any regulated industry where you have to submit data to government regulators, to agents, where you're submitting financial records, proof of residence, citizenships, tax records, where you're being required to submit to random drug tests. All of this data is out there. It's not protected today, or well protected, and you have no control over it. But by encoding it on a blockchain, encrypting the data, and making sure that the owners of the data share the secret key that's used to encrypt, that allows the owner to know when somebody is accessing the data and to explicitly grant permission by releasing the private key from their smartphone or from some other device. And that private key is used then to decrypt the data that's been encrypted, and the data then will expire based on the function of a smart contract within 30 days, within a week, and the data gets re-encrypted again with a new random key. So this is, to me, in our world today, the world I live in, privacy is the key thing.
Right, and so you were talking about having the correct permissions to be on a certain blockchain. Do you believe that there are advantages or disadvantages to putting information on public blockchains or spinning up private ones?
So, yes, so the platform I'm building is based on what we call a permissioned blockchain, which means that everybody that joins the blockchain has been vetted or has a vested interest in being on that blockchain. The problems with the public blockchains are, they actually come down to consensus and governance, right? There's very little governance today with Bitcoin. There's some governance we see with Ethereum, but as we saw with the DAO hack, we saw with the Bitcoin fork recently, I don't think this is a recipe for a future success to have a lack of governance in blockchains. And there's far more governance in a private permission blockchain than you will get in a public one. And I think there are also scalability issues with the public blockchains that have not been fully addressed. So for remittance, the Lightning Network, for example, is a new, unique way to solve some of the issues with the speed on the Bitcoin blockchain. But I think we need a lot more things like Lightning.
Right, and that's a great segue to talk about, I think, one of the more interesting use cases for cryptocurrency and blockchain as a store of value across borders. So Tessa, can you talk about, maybe some of those use cases you find interesting?
Yeah, so at La Plataforma, we are tackling the problem of remittances and trying to improve financial equality and financial inclusion in Latin America for people who are currently excluded. And so at La Plataforma, we have built a mobile-optimized platform that sends cash from one country to another using a smartphone and without a bank account. So basically, we are launched out of Santiago right now. We send transfers from Chile to Peru, Colombia, and Venezuela currently, and we're looking to expand all the time. And our target customer is the person who's unbanked. So, and a lot of times that happens in Latin America because people move across borders a lot to find jobs in other countries and make money in those countries and then send the money home to their families. So a lot of our customers are from Peru, from Colombia, and from Venezuela, and they've recently moved to Chile. They don't have bank accounts. And so we are using Bitcoin because we find it to be a secure, fast, and reliable way to send money across borders. We also, in Chile specifically, it's a country where it's extremely unregulated right now when it comes to Bitcoin, and so we're able to operate as a small business outside of the regulatory restrictions of the current financial system. And lastly, it allows us to send money a lot less expensive and realize cost savings in an operational way for our business so that we can pass that along to our customers.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I'm actually of Greek descent, and so, as everyone probably knows, Greece has been going through some economic struggles the past several years now, and the problem of sending money cross-border, it's a lengthy, paper-heavy process, and a lot of times the intermediary is taking a significant cut. Exactly. So what did you notice about Chile specifically, or other countries in South America? What was the specific draw for you to start there?
Yeah, so we initially were looking to start in New York and send money from the US to Mexico. But first of all, it's an extremely crowded space, and there's a ton of regulations in the US around this. And so we actually got into an accelerator in Chile, which is why I actually went down there to begin with. So we got some funding, and then living there, I just started seeing that this is a country in South America that is really like a leader economically and one of the strongest economies in Latin America. And so just living there, I saw like all of the increasing migration and the trends, especially from Venezuela, Peru, and Colombia. And so we just kind of made a shift in our business and decided to launch there instead because it just worked out a lot better for our business.
Yeah, and Tessa, you touched on something really interesting, that people with just a smartphone and internet, they're able to, automatically participate in this ecosystem. And so, Matt, that kind of brings us to what you guys are doing at Digital Mint. Talk to us about how you're kind of trying to change the game for point of sale.
Yeah, so I definitely want to piggyback first off the fact that all of our use cases for blockchain technology vary to an extent, which just shows how dynamic it is, right? Like permission blockchains, you seem to, be using that as an application. For us, it's been Bitcoin, right? So our customers are what's considered underbanked or unbanked by the FDIC, which many would be surprised to know. I believe based on the most recent census data is like 23% of Americans, US adult households, right? That same population, maybe like 80 to 90% of them have smartphones. So what we've seen, and if you go on our website and see where most of our locations are, they're in currency exchanges, they're check cashing places. So since they can't, deposit their check or get a direct deposit, whatever it may be, they cash their check and then put it into one of our ATMs or use our point of sale systems. And utilize that smartphone that they have as their personal bank account or an on-ramp to e-commerce. Something we take very seriously is educating the customer on best practices, right? So we put a lot of measures in place to make sure that if they're gonna, be investing in Bitcoin, using it for whatever reason it may be, that they know how to back up their wallet, for example, and avoid common scams like, just to name one, like eBay Motors. People will post false listings on eBay saying that they're selling Ford Focus and ask for payment strictly in Bitcoin, and they get scammed by it. So we have measures in place to flag those transactions and actually freeze them, and until we talk to the customer and verify that they know what they're doing with Bitcoin, we don't actually release the funds. It's a little off track, but yeah. So that's where we've started off, and again, if you take a look at our map, we're in a lot of marginalized communities, and I could give a ton of stories of people who have used it for very positive purposes. Obviously, Bitcoin had, especially back in 2011, 2012, when the Chicago Bitcoin Center officially launched, which Digital Mint is a product of, had a certain stigma to it, right? So I'd say a lot of our efforts are focused towards kind of highlighting the positive uses and working in collaboration with the appropriate agencies and abiding by the rules and regulations required under the BSA AML policies. So.
Right, and then so like what kind of, you mentioned that you have a lot of your ATMs in some more marginalized communities, so who would you say are the people who are most benefiting from companies like yours where you offer best practices, and what's the kind of audience that you've noticed has been more engaging with cryptocurrency?
So those people that don't have access to the traditional financial tools that I imagine most in this audience have, whether that being access to a bank account, a credit card for whatever reason, they've benefited the most, I would say. Because, think about all you can do just by using Apple Pay, right, PayPal, whatever it might be. You're going through a third party, of course, right? But if you want to buy something online, like we have one client, for example, who uses Expedia because he travels a lot, right? And they were one of the first major companies kind of pioneering the way. And he does it all in Bitcoin, and he gets these flights often at a discount because the merchants prefer this payment method that can't be disputed, right? Like a fraudulent credit card transaction.
Yeah, and then that leads us into kind of my next question, is that there are so many great use cases that we were talking about, so many great applications, but now Bitcoin has been around for several years now, nearly a decade. So what do you guys think is kind of standing in the way of mainstream adoption of this cryptocurrency or any of the other cryptocurrencies for these specific use cases? Is it just the fact that Bitcoin has had maybe somewhat of a tarnished name after some of the scandals that's been associated with it? So maybe John, you can talk to us a little bit about that first.
So the fundamental problem is the storage of the private keys. Right? People don't understand that there is actually no such thing as a Bitcoin, right? That doesn't actually exist. It's transactions in a ledger, global ledger that's distributed all around the world, and the key to unlocking your value on that blockchain is your private keys. Right. And the storage of those keys are paramount, because once they've been lost, they can't be recovered again. And we've mathematical guarantees that we can't recover them again. This is an important part of the securing the entire blockchain. But for too many people, they will go to somewhere like, I'm just not knocking these exchanges, but Coinbase or somewhere like that, and they will store their keys. Right. On an online central repository that has a name and password to log in. And here we go again, right, with Equifax and with all this stuff. You saw the scam with the Verizon thing, where a guy suddenly saw his Bitcoins disappearing out of his wallet online because somebody had called up Verizon and ported his number over to their number. Then they logged into Gmail and got all So I think that's a fundamental, we've got to solve that problem. Now, there's solutions to it, but we need to solve it in a way that ordinary people can understand how to secure their keys, how to secure the 24 magic words that will recreate your original key. Because without that, the fear is always going to be, if I lose it, if I lose my access to my bank account today, I can call the bank and I can go down there. You can't call anybody who loses a private key. By definition, it's gone. And I think there's hundreds of millions of dollars on the blockchain today that is lost.
Right, so that's kind of an interesting dichotomy that you're pointing out, that on the one hand, you don't want to trust these third-party intermediaries with your private information, but on the other hand, it does make it more convenient if you happen to lose access to those, and you can, yeah, so that's really interesting. So Tessa?
I think the biggest question I always get as an entrepreneur telling people that we use Bitcoin to send money is, well, how do you deal with the fact that it's so volatile? And so I think that, like, I'm much less technical than you, but I think that from like the large scheme, like large lens, that people are really uncomfortable because they don't know how much it's going to be worth tomorrow or the next day or the next day, and there's these huge crashes, and then all of a sudden now it's worth almost $5,000 per coin, and it's like, how from like a mass market perspective, it's kind of just like, how am I going to even use this? And then from an entrepreneurial perspective, I think that for entrepreneurs, we are already facing a path where everything is stacked against us. And so to then go and use Bitcoin where, like I said, you never know like what it's going to be tomorrow. I think it kind of deters people from wanting to use that for their businesses as well. But I think there are opportunities to use any coin on any blockchain, as long as you figure out a way to circumvent those challenges.
I can just attest to when I closed my seed funding for the company, I got paid in Ether. And if you want to know what the challenge of converting Ether, a large amount of it, back to US dollars, I mean, it took me weeks and weeks and weeks. And then when the bottom fell out of the market, I had to hold on to at least a third of the Ether. So there are huge practical challenges in when you want to come back to a fiat currency of some kind.
So I think there's several hurdles kind of in the way of widespread adoption. To your point, I think that there needs to be widespread, like easily accessible education about how to secure your private keys, right, and the best solutions. But that can't, we need to break that down into a very like digestible information, like from the most to least technical person, right? Because I mean, we've learned our lessons like as we've gone along, and we've had people who have, you know, their app was loading too slow, so they just deleted the wallet, and they hadn't, you know, a third-party wallet like Red Wallet or blockchain or something, and they basically didn't understand that Bitcoin is a technology protocol, right? They think it's a company, so like a lot of the times we'll get calls when somebody's deleted their wallet or having some issue, or if somebody's spamming the blockchain and transactions are taking 8 hours plus to confirm. You know, it's a huge issue. Second thing, on a more something that's more my specialty, I would say, is that from a media perspective, there's a lot of authoritative, figures in finance, right? Who may say that Bitcoin is a mirage or that Bitcoin's a fraud. And then you'll see these people's same companies or institutions buying up massive amounts of it the same day. Just hypothetically. So my point being is that I think that in today's media world, I mean, journalism has completely changed. We've seen it across everything, politics, finance, whatever it might be, like BuzzFeed, I can't stand it. It's all clickbait, right? Like, so I think that needs to change. There just needs to be better information out there, and when people misconstrue the way that Bitcoin and blockchain works, I think that they should be called out on it and held accountable.
Right, and so, despite all of those, what would you guys say are the merits of using Bitcoin for your specific businesses, or do you have maybe a preference to other altcoins? I know we've talked a lot about ICOs and new token economies being created today, so what would you guys say is kind of the next frontier for that? Is there going to be another Bitcoin? Is everything going to kind of converge on that public network? Are there going to be, different chains and networks for different specific use cases, maybe a remittance coin, maybe a specific point of sale for micropayments coin? So John, maybe you can start us off there.
Okay, I think one frame of reference you can use is if you think about Bitcoin as crypto 1.0, and since then a lot of advances have been made. I mean, any money I have personally invested in cryptocurrencies are in Zcash, and it's because of the technology behind Zcash. And I think Zcash and their technology is leading the way in a lot of data privacy again on the public blockchains as well. So that's one thing. And another thing that people need to understand with Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, is there's an economic angle to this as well. There's a certain amount of game theory involved in this. It's not just a core technology. There's at least 3 different areas of study that you need to understand why they work and why they're valuable. And I think we need to get more and more into that. So even on the platform I'm using, part of my goal is to build up a trust system so people can trust that certain data has been verified and secured on our blockchain. And to do that, we're using tokens. Now, these tokens are never envisioned that will become monetary, but they're exchanged between nodes to perform actions or to get access to certain data.
Right.
So I think there's a full economy there for tokens that are not going to be monetized.
Right.
But the ICO stuff, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to go there.
If I could jump in real quick. I mean, I think, so the way that Bitcoin started out, at least the first people that I met in the industry, were considered like crypto anarchists or whatever, had this completely different, and the Fed, like very, very kind of unrealistic expectation for what it would require for this type of technology to flourish. So like to that point, I think that, if you're geared towards privacy, you use something like Zcash, for example. But you have to understand that, like, if Bitcoin and blockchain technology is to flourish in the future, we have to collaborate with banks and regulatory institutions, and we should proactively take part in that process so we don't have things like the bit license that make it nearly impossible for startups to compete. Last thing on ICOs is, I mean, I personally, I'm sure all of you experience this, but I maybe get 10 to 20 emails a day about like getting a token pre-sale, and to become like an advisor on it. So like just approach with extreme caution. But ultimately, there will be a lot of different use cases, and the way that I think of it is in terms of network effect, right? So like right now, I consider Bitcoin to be the Facebook, right? Ethereum to be, I don't know, what's a comparable social network.
I can't even
that's
think
like,
of one right now. MySpace has kind of been dead for a little while, right? So
Yeah, Snapchat maybe,
Snapchat,
I
maybe,
guess.
right.
Yeah. But I'm trying to think of what's the MySpace, but okay, sorry.
No, so given the time, we want to keep going, so how about a nice hand for the entrepreneurs?
Thank you.